You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, everybody, let's get into it and pull that tarp. My guest today is Doshia Woods, the head coach for the University of Denver women's basketball team. Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, Coach.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Great to sit down with you, Doshia, and dig into leadership, your career, and all the work that you're doing at the University of Denver with that women's basketball team. One of the things I do know about your work with the team is that when you arrived on campus, you implemented a new up-tempo offense. And regardless of what a listener or viewer knows about basketball, that's a big change. And I'm curious, to dig into, how do you think about implementing change as a leader? And what are the little things that you have to do as a leader when you're trying to change something, change the direction of something that make all the difference?
I think first and foremost, you have to be patient. Our AD asked us one time, when we come out of the pandemic, what is a quality that you will kind of continue to use and apply? And I honestly had never been that patient of a person. And getting the position in a pandemic, first time head coach, I didn't have a choice but to be patient. And I think being able to kind of change our style of play, it took the players some time, which, if the pace is fast, which means a lot of running, right? And they were like, oh, we're basketball players. Like, yeah, well, we're at 5280 for a reason. I'd never envisioned being at this altitude and then walking the ball up the court. Like, what's the point then of working at this altitude? So, I think the patience part was just really gave me and my staff a chance to get our players to buy in, honestly, and after some time to hopefully see some success with it. So in terms of the leadership part, being patient and then also just being transparent. A few years ago, I did a leadership workshop with the Marines, and in one of the sessions, they talked about explaining why. This is what we're going to do, and this is why. And so I do a lot of that with our team that helps with accountability. You don't have to really yell a lot. You can just say, this is our drill. This is our goal. We didn't reach our goal. This is going to be the response. So patience, patience, patience. It's probably going to be like a broken record, but that's definitely requires a lot of patience to lead effectively.
Patience, patience, patience. You also mentioned another P word there, the pandemic, and how you take some of the positives from the pandemic and implement them permanently, and how you avoid some of the challenges that the pandemic has created. So how are you thinking about that? How are you thinking about the things that we've learned through the pandemic from a leadership, teamwork, engagement standpoint that you can continue on post-pandemic, whenever that is?
We're in a quarter system here, so we don't start school until mid-September. And August is really giving me a chance to figure out what I learned in the pandemic and what I can continue to apply, even though hopefully we'll get to a new normal. I think Zoom is one of those areas that we can still be able to effectively use in a way where we're not all zoomed out, but we do a series called Life 4.0, which is just a chance for me, honestly, just to bring a lot of different topics to our team. You don't necessarily have a place for it. So whether it's something about mental health, a guest speaker, whether we have a book, nutrition, even learning parts of campus, I realized with our freshmen, they never had a chance to take an official tour. They just kind of came sight unseen, a lot of virtually. So in part, a lot of that stemmed from them to be able to at least bring parts of campus to them. But I think being able to find, obviously, the Zoom is a way, and then just learn a lot in the sense of our team. I can't speak for everybody's team, but our team definitely, I'm going to adjust practice next year. When we first got together, we're fortunate to have 3 full-size courts. And because of pandemic, we had a coach from the middle court, but we actually got a lot more reps, and that we were further along in some ways just because we didn't have just a half court setting. So I think the other thing is being able to adjust practice, and it's definitely made me a much better listener with our team, and to be able to kind of, when necessary, give them a voice, or when I can give them a voice. Being able to listen and apply, I think helps with team dynamics, just because I feel like, their opinion matters. Not everything, they're not coaching a team, but if it's something that's not a big deal and you can give them a voice, give them a voice.
How important is that? I understand that at one point in your career, you implemented a system where you would give a questionnaire to members of your team Is that something that you still do? And how important is that two-way feedback between coach and player?
I still do it. Honestly, it started when I was a position coach, coaching the guards. And it was just really at the end of the year, most coaches, you're having a one-on-one meeting about what this player needs to do to continue to help the team or to get better or to change their role. And it's kind of a whole list of video, stats, all of these things. And so I was thinking, well, what if they have something to offer? What if there's something I can get better at? And it was a team, fortunately, that I was close to that had built that relationship up. And so I sent it to, I think we had about 8 guards at the time, and I sent it to them. And it really changed the trajectory of my career because they were honest. And a couple of them brutally honest in the sense of I always thought I was that coach that, oh, everybody can talk to you, get along, but not everybody's perfect either. And I learned then don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. And I can't ask you your opinion, Andrew, and then get mad when you give it to me, and I learned that. And so, and after they sent the feedback, I had a couple individual meetings about things that I really could improve on. If I could improve on it, or if I wasn't going to change, this is why. And I think it gave us all a better perspective of, okay, maybe I was too harsh. The player said one time, or maybe I was too harsh. I said back to them. So when I got the position here, we actually did it at Christmas. On Christmas break, I sent it to everybody, and we made some changes going into conference play based on their feedback. I would say it is something that has really helped the trajectory of my career, but it's definitely one that I had to mature as a coach to be able to handle that feedback. And I think once you're mature and you realize that they actually have things to offer, especially now they have so much more access than we ever did, that they might have seen something on Twitter or TikTok that they want to try and practice. And it might be better than what we're doing, or it might accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And so they really enjoy it. And I think last year, as they're all trying to get to know you, they're not sure how much they can be honest. And so I felt like some of them, like, I want to write this and just see what happens. But no, it's good. And I feel like it's going to be a staple with me and how I coach. I think making it a collaboration is really important. Gone are the days where you can kind of just say, do this because I'm the coach. It's just, you can't coach like that anymore. Not in this day and age.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that time has come and passed. How did you know that you were ready and I guess mature enough as a leader to take that step and ambitiously ask for candid feedback from your players? Because as I'm listening to you, you said it changed the trajectory of your career in many ways. And for folks listening, whether they're coaching basketball or they're starting out in their career or they're a CEO of a company, they might be thinking to themselves, hey, I'd love to get some feedback from those around me, both peers and folks that report to me or are part of the team I lead. How do they know that they're ready to take that step?
I think first having a player or staff member that you've built a relationship and trust with. I try to, if you made me describe my leadership style, I would also start with transparent. I'm super transparent, and I think it's important that they see you either apologize, right, when you're wrong, because we're not always right, be vulnerable at times where, something is upsetting or you're emotional for another reason. I think when I got to the point, then, I had coached a few of the players for 2 to 3 years at that point. We were all really close. And I'm thinking if we're this close, maybe we can kind of take it a step further where they can kind of help me become a better coach as well. So I think, initially it might be hard to implement, and you just use the example here with our current team, getting in the position in the pandemic, we all did a lot of individual FaceTimes, things like that, but the relationship wasn't the same. But every day I try to show up and lead in a way that everybody knew they were valued, respected, and appreciated. And it's something that I talk about weekly with our staff or with our team, that I want everyone to feel that way. So I think once you feel like you've established the trust, either with your players or your coworkers, and then just say, be very honest. And I think, I learned this the first time is you can't overreact when you get the response back. I'm reading the emails and I was like, oh, and then I was like, okay. And then you have to be willing to look yourself. But I think you have to be transparent. You have to build that relationship, and then also being honest with yourself, because sometimes you're just not there. I can't say 15 years, definitely early in my career, I was not there. I mean, I was like, I'm the coach and I wasn't there. But I think over time, realizing that they just have so much more access than we do, that they might have information that can help you be a better coach, a better person, and help them be a better coach in person as well, a player in person.
So coach, if you can't go have coffee, sit down in a coffee shop with every player, like the beginning of the pandemic, How do you go about showing them that you care and showing them that you're prepared to lead by example? What were some of the things that you did besides the face-to-face Zooms, of course?
Yeah, besides the Zooms, we honestly started to have a group get to practice early, stay later, try to maximize that time. I think sometimes you get so fixated on I'm at the gym all day, and in every state, situation was different. We were pretty limited to our court time. So I made sure I was out on the court, 20, 30 minutes early. Hey, if this player showed up, even if it's just 5 minutes for me to rebound for her, ask non-basketball questions. As a team, we did a lot of just your typical games, right? Cahoots, comedy night, karaoke night. We did a lot of those different type of things. And then I would say I've always been a big handwritten note writer. And I did a speech a few years ago basically on how do you kind of recruit your current team. This is before the portal was a thing. And it just kind of just stemmed from you work really hard to get player XYZ here. And then September rolls around and you don't have a chance to get to know them. You're already on to the next class, right? September 1, you can reach out. So I started to honestly recruit our current team like I recruited them in the whole process. So our team here, like this summer, I've already written them 2 handwritten notes. I think it's just something a little bit more personal. And often what happens is I'll either put something in there that I've noticed either in practice or on their social media, and then they'll text me and talk about it. We can build a relationship that way. I think the positive of social media, especially when you're in a pandemic, is you can kind of get an idea of their interests, what they like, what you guys have in common, and then let that kind of jump into something else.
It's interesting you say that, Doshia, because one of the things that I've always kind of prided myself in my career has been, handwritten notes. I'll if I see a book that I think someone will find interesting, I'll print it, I'll order it off of Amazon, and I'll send them a copy with a note. The other thing that I've tried to do is when I'm in, and this goes, obviously pre-pandemic, when you're in more traditional meetings and you're sitting in someone's office or you're sitting in a boardroom, trying to be perceptive as to what's around me, right? So if I'm in a room and somebody has a lot of University of Denver paraphernalia on the walls, I'm going to remember that. And I'm going to, ask a question. Well, did you go to University of Denver? Do you have a son or daughter that goes to University of Denver? And I'm going to try and lodge that in the back of my brain and use it to create a powerful connection, something that we can go back to that shows that person that I care, more about them as a person than maybe what they do for a living or what they're going to do for me in that potential moment. And I think that's what you're talking about there, trying to see the whole person, not just the player.
Exactly. I think too many times, players feel, I never want our players to feel like just because it's practice time or when my career is done, then the relationship's done. I say all the time, the basketball is 4 to 5 years, but it's really after that, unless that's all you want from me is this 4 to 5 years. But after that is where the fun starts of, you starting your life, needing a letter of recommendation, wanting advice for something. So I try to implement that. And a lot of my former players could tell you, either their first phone call or before something big happens, like, okay, wait, I have to see what you think. And you guys don't have to keep calling me. But I think that's really the fun part for me is, the basketball sense when they're playing, it's really not that long when you think about it.
In the scheme of things, right, the X's and O's are just a small piece of what you have to do every day as a coach. And frankly, a very small piece of what, players will look back and how they'll remember you as their coach. I'm curious, did you always know that you wanted to be a coach? How did you get into coaching?
If you made me go back to like my childhood, I think I wanted to be a lawyer. Honestly, that was probably my first lawyer. And I was kind of fixated on that. I didn't start playing basketball until the 7th grade. And it really was about that time that I started to really fall in love with the game. And I was a ball girl for Washburn University. So to see that team compete day in and day out, I didn't know you could play basketball in college, and then I didn't know it was like you could have this whole career. So once I got to college, it was clear that I wanted to coach. And ever since I've started coaching, I always knew I wanted to be a head coach. It would never wavered. So I would say probably about 7th, 8th grade is when I started thinking hard about being able to coach. And I've always been told leadership is just, I'm a natural leader. I don't know whatever that means if you can be natural, but it's always come easy to me to be one that people either want to listen to or follow or want my advice. So to be able to kind of merge that with my love of basketball and love of young kids or college, college is like that. I call them the double Dutch age, right? You're a kid, but you're not really a kid. You can kind of double Dutch before adulthood rolls around. So yeah. So 7th grade, if that counts, then pretty much Most of it.
I think one of the powerful things about the typical college years is that it is often for many a period of time that is really pivotal in someone's life, right? So for many, this is their first time away from home. It's the first time that they're making kind of consumer decisions about what are they going to buy? Are they going to buy Coca-Cola? Or are they going to buy Pepsi? Are they going to buy Poland Spring Water or Deer Park? Are they going to shop here? Are they going to shop there? Are they going to be community oriented? Are they going to not be community? So I think there's a lot of things in those college years that you have a chance to influence, which is what makes me always so particularly fascinated with people who devote their life to coaching college athletes. And it's become a big business, but I think when you boil it down, coaching college athletes is one of the most powerful things that anyone can do. Is there a coach that you've had or a coach that you've worked with in your career that you have particularly modeled yourself after?
I feel like I'm a combination of a lot of them, honestly, that I've worked for. I think prior to getting here, I worked at 5 different places, and I could see a little bit of myself in my decision making and things that I do in each of them. But I definitely would have to give Coach Stockton probably a lot of credit. I worked for her the longest, for 10 years at Tulane. And I really just admired, she's going in year 28. So to be able to stay at one place that long obviously means you're successful, and not just on the court, but your players are successful off the court. So she's the one that I probably modeled a lot of just being able to work when it's time to work, being able to have a balance. So if you maybe choose just one, it would be her, but I definitely see a lot of myself in each of those coaches that I work for. And even to take it back to my high school coach, it was funny in high school because she coached basketball and I also played softball. So we didn't have a break from each other. Both of us were super intense, and I was definitely a hothead then. And so, but how she handled me then as an athlete to make sure that I could reach my goals, I see a lot of her and me as well, with just the patience part, because she had a lot of patience with me when she didn't have to.
Great leaders, I find, have this ability to kind of draw pieces from a lot of different places and are confident enough that they know that there are some special things that they bring to the equation that are personally their own, right? There's things that you're bringing to the table that are Doshia Woods. And then there are things that you take from a lot of different places that you kind of bring together to create the whole you. And it's a constant evolution. You mentioned your time at Tulane there. I had the good fortune of visiting one of my dearest, oldest friends who was a student at Tulane. And I'll tell you, that is a fun place. I don't know. Was it very hard to recruit people to come there? I can't imagine. That was a fun place.
Really, I think, Tulane is, first of all, I feel like Tulane and New Orleans is a lot of like misconceptions, right? Because it's what you think you're getting. And then once you get there, every single time we had a chance to get someone on campus, they're like, oh, I didn't know it was so pretty, or I didn't know it was this. But I think Tulane, very similar to University of Denver, is just the academic piece. I think ultimately, especially when you're recruiting female athletes, they're able to think about the big picture, them and their parents a lot better maybe than some other sports and some other areas. So having the academic piece, I feel like, was always the kind of last cherry on the top, and if you will, of just been able to kind of convince people to come. I think what I really like, it's funny, people thought we always had a ton of rules, right? You're in New Orleans and you have all these distractions. And one thing that I really have applied that Coach Stockton did is we just took our time in recruiting, and we would just be very upfront. Not everybody could live here. Not everybody can handle the distractions, whether it be off the court, because we know New Orleans is a fun city, on the court, things like that. So being able to kind of get ahead and then just taking our time. I'm not one of those coaches that as soon as we talk, you're getting an offer the first conversation. I'm just, now we've lost a couple kids here at DU because it's, oh, are you offering them? Like, we just start talking. Like, what's your full name? What's your dog's name? Something, your parents' name. So I think the recruiting piece, you try to be patient on the front end, because places like Denver, New Orleans, they're not going to leave. They're not.
No, those are two great communities. And I think, I had the chance to visit my friend at Tulane. And then I, on business trips, I probably spent another 4 or 5 visits to New Orleans. And one of the things that's always amazed me is the community and how, when you have a powerful community, and I went to Penn State, which was a great community, a very kind of proud community that rallied around that university. And what you have at Denver, as you described there, is the same. And I think when you can attract people to a community that's going to put their arms around folks, appreciate hard work, appreciate engagement, it's a fantastic story to tell, on top of obviously great athletics, great academics.
Yes, yes. Definitely agree with you. Definitely agree with you there. You mentioned something earlier about, just coaching this demographic, right? Coaching this demographic where it's the last step before adulthood. And, because I'm so conscious of that, I think sometimes we move and act like we have to go through life, go through basketball. We're not going to make mistakes. And if we do make a mistake, I'm going to kind of just go into a spiral. And so we have one team rule, literally one team rule, and we treat everybody fair, not equal. And it's something that we talk about on a daily basis, but I'm really conscious of this is the last step before adulthood. You're going to make mistakes. Let's grow through the mistakes and learn through them and give them the space to learn through them, not just everything is not just definite. And it's been a fun way to kind of coach, but really to watch them. Ultimately, when they leave here with a degree, I want them to feel empowered to walk in their truth, whatever that is for them.
So talk about that for a minute. So fair, but not equal. How do you unpack that a little bit?
I honestly started, I don't know if you have siblings, right? I have a brother and a sister.
I have a younger brother.
See, right. And I'm sure your parents didn't treat you guys the same. And too many times you're wondering, well, how come he gets to, and how come, and when I do this, and I think it ultimately became from, I don't have any kids. So essentially your team is your kids and they're not all the same. So like we had one player who struggled being on time, right? She struggled being on time. And so whatever, a month or so later, someone else was late as well. Well, it was the one kid, it was like her seventh time. And the other one, it was like her first time. But they both were late. So everybody's kind of like hesitating, wait and see what I'm going to do. And so we met at half court and I said, this is going to be the response. I don't say, the reaction, I don't say consequences, but this is going to be a reaction because she did this and this is her seventh time. She did this is her first time. And this is why their reaction is going to be different. And it really has helped me, I think, with the credibility of the team because I feel like what makes sense for them. And it's not, some of us need more time. And I'll tell them that, some people might have a lot more rope because you don't know what they've dealt with before, right? So you don't know how they're coming to us or what their past has been like. So it's important that I give them the space to grow up. Now, if it becomes consistent, then we'll have to have other conversations. But the team really has embraced it because I think they feel like if they can convince me, if it's something they did wrong, we can talk about it. But it's really going to be specific to them, whatever it was that happened that needs a reaction. So yeah, fair, not equal, I feel like has really helped us grow too as a program.
What's interesting there is the transparency, right? You made the team a part of the process and what you said to them was, as I think about this, you essentially, if I was one of them, I would think, okay, my coach respects me as an individual, understands that my situation is different than perhaps the person next to me, and is going to take the time and going to care enough to apply a kind of a tailored approach, something that makes sense for me, but maybe might not make sense for the person next to me. That's really interesting, Coach. And I'm so fascinated by that explanation there. How do you reconcile kind of the fact that you've got a bunch of individuals and you're coaching a team sport? Do you look at each person individually and say, I have to figure out how to make this all work? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to have a relationship, build it. I've learned being a head coach, the relationship is different than when I was an assistant, just in the sense of they hang on literally to your every word. As an assistant, I could joke a lot more or do things I didn't think that was, that big of a deal. And now it's like I have to be conscious of what I say because they hang on to everything. I'm like, I'm just joking. Like it was, that was not for you. But it's still, I try to spend time to get to know each of them individually in their own ways. And then we talk when you say the transparency piece, whether we start practice at the circle, a half court, we end practice that way. And it's just a very transparent of, they don't know everything that I'm thinking all the time, but if it applies to them and it's going to affect the group, I'll say, this is what I'm thinking. This is why. Any questions? But I think it definitely takes time to build that. But we also talk about in terms of the team aspect, unless you're good, unless you can kind of be good by yourself, stand in what we need you to do for the team, it's going to be hard for you to do that and for us to be successful. So we talk about the individual and then how it applies to the team. And one of our Life 4.0s, we talked about the importance of leadership. And I think that's easy to talk about. We would talk about who's a good leader, who's not. You read a lot of these leadership books. But when we got done with that part, I said, okay, now who's a good follower? And we talk about that. Last year we did captains. They had to interview for captains, say why they'd be a good captain. And I can tell you, as a head coach, as the first and last time I'm doing that. So because I feel like everybody, when they leave here, should be able to lead in some area. You might like the weight room. So I want to empower you to be able to speak up in the weight room. You might be the person who's on time all the time. So you're responsible if somebody's late, of holding them accountable on your thread without us. And so that's one thing that we started in the spring of just everybody's going to be able to lead in some capacity and whatever that looks like for you. Some of us are vocal, some of us aren't. And when we get together, we'll talk about it. So when we talked about the importance of being able to follow, is I made everybody go through, like, when's the time that you would lead and when's the time you would follow? And so now I can hold them accountable later when we get into it. Is like, okay, you knew you weren't, a vocal leader, and this is why we need you to follow. So it's been good. And I know some people think I'm too transparent, but I really love coaching this group just because they've been able to just kind of buy in. And then it's been fun to hear them find their voice too, but just the way that I'm able to lead them.
I absolutely love that. That is one of the coolest things I have heard on this journey, that everybody can lead in something. It's so powerful. Have you had student athletes come back to you now that you're building that system of everybody can lead in something? Have you gotten any feedback from any of the student athletes on it? Do they feel that empowerment that you described?
I think they feel empowered where they feel they matter in each space. Normally you'll say, oh, where's the captains or where's the seniors? And we literally circle up and I'll ask a question that is open for anybody. So I think they definitely feel, if you ask them, just like their voice matters. Like when I do speak, whether I'm a freshman, whether I'm a senior, we end every practice with shout outs, shout out somebody or shout out something that went well. And, oftentimes it's the freshmen that are quick, where you would expect them to be a little bit more reserved. They're raising their hands. So it really has empowered them. I think if you had them on a podcast, they'll tell you that they feel like their voice matters. And when they speak, we listen. We listen. Do we apply everything? And if we can't, I'll usually tell them why. This is why we can't do this. And we talk a lot about, there's 20 people in our travel party. We can't have 20 different opinions. So you might get your way this week, and this next week we have to go with someone else's idea. And this is why, because it makes sense for the group, not you. But I'm constantly talking this type of language to them because I don't want them to leave here feeling like their voice didn't matter and that life will give you a lot of anxiety. Basketball should not. You worked hard for this opportunity, so it should be fun.
One of the things that's always frustrating to me and disappoints me is when someone says, I'm not a good leader. I'm not built to be a leader. I'm not going to be a leader. And I think you kind of answered that question there, Coach. You said everybody can lead in something. And I think for everybody listening and watching, and this is a moment to take away here. There's many, many takeaways from our conversation and from the lessons and insights that you've shared, Coach. This has been absolutely fantastic. But I think one of the cool lessons that if you're listening and you're a CEO, if you're a parent, if you're a coach, if you're leading a sales team, whatever it is you're doing, everybody around you can lead in something. And I think as leaders and as people, we all have a responsibility to challenge everyone to lead in something and give everybody an opportunity to lead in something, just like you're doing, Coach. This has been so much fun. I can't wait to keep tabs on all the things that you're going to continue to accomplish in your career. And I look forward to staying in touch, Coach.
All right, thank you. This was a blast. I appreciate you having me.
All right, Coach, keep pulling the tarp. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my monthly email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.